Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Development Discourse, where we ideate for Africa's development. My name is Patrick Okigbo, founding partner at Nextier. Nextier is a multi-competency advisory firm focused on solving Africa's complex development problems. So Nigeria has significant challenges that cannot be addressed through traditional or conventional investment instruments. The country needs a new strategy that focuses on values beyond just profitability and can also impact the base of the pyramid. Impact investing could be a possible strategy. Our topic today is impact investing for sustainable development. My guest is Thelma Ekiyor-Solanke. Thelma is the chairperson of the Nigeria Office for Philanthropy and Impact Investing. She's a distinguished impact investor, philanthropic advisor, and social entrepreneur. She's led several organizations and initiatives focused on impact investing and women's economic empowerment. For instance, she co-founded SME.ng, and she works here. These organizations focus on helping female entrepreneurs realize their business goals. She co-founded EBI Fund and the Funding Space, which offer a training, mentoring, and access to finance platform for social entrepreneurs in West Africa. She was the founder and chairperson of AfriGrants Resources. She was the pioneering CEO of the T.Y. Danjuma Foundation, a big grantor in the space, and executive director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute. She sits on several boards, including the Nigeria's National Advisory Board on Impact Investing, Shell Foundation's All On. She's the Africa chair of the Black Philanthropy Month. I can go on and on. Thelma has a law degree from the University of Buckingham, an MBA from Imperial College London, and she's a Stanford Fellow. Thelma, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. It's good to be here.
Excellent. Let's start from the beginning, right? So how do you define impact investing, and how has your definition evolved over time?
So the definition of impact investing is what makes it unique. And if any of those pillars are missing, it ceases to be impact investing. So impact investing is investing that brings environmental, social returns alongside financial returns. And the centrality of impact investing is its intentionality. It is a deliberate strategy to do that. So if you take out any of those components, it ceases to be impact investing. There's so many types of investing that are valid and relevant for different situations, but having this definition as the conceptual framework for impact investing is important so that people know who the players are and able to identify the ways that impact investing is done. So impact investing, the asset classes are now across board, as well as the tools to measure investing. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. So it's that dual goal of focusing on the bottom line, financial returns, but also focusing on, benefits to society, environment, etc. So what are some of the common misconceptions, we face with the definition of impact investing or how it's practiced, and why have some of these misconceptions persisted?
Excellent question. First of all, a lot of people say impact investing is philanthropy. It is not. Philanthropic organizations can do impact investing, but philanthropy is not impact investing. Impact investing is not charity. And so impact investing is not ESG. So there's so many misconceptions that, try to dilute what it is. And I think it's just because people have not put a lot of energy in and I'm happy we started with the whole idea of concept framing and things like that. People have not put a lot of energy in that. So everyone, it's the shorthand language now for anybody who wants to do something that makes a difference. So I hear people say to me, oh, my company creates jobs. We're impact investors, And I often say to them, well, your company can be an impact investor, but you're not an impact investor because you create jobs. You are making impact, there's no doubt. but you're not an impact investor. So that nuance is always coming to the fore. And you see that so many people who are advocates for impact investing, they spend so much of their energy on this argument of what is and what is not impact investing.
And the big issue as well is that trade-off between making a financial return and also achieving, social impact. So how do you, even in the companies and the initiatives you funded, how do you make that balance?
Another dichotomy in the sector. So people often ask, is it, so the conversation is always around, is it impact first or profit first? And the answer to that, it just depends on the priorities of the particular implementing organization. So for example, a lot of faith-based entities are coming into the impact investing space. And for many of them, it is impact first. It doesn't mean that they will not make the financial returns, but that's not really what they have set up an impact fund to do. It is first impact, and then the financial returns allows them to be sustainable. Whereas a lot of the financial institutions globally that have come into the impact investing space, for a lot of them, it's finance first, or if not finance first, finance and impact together. And they often will tell you that it presents them with a false dichotomy to choose, because it's almost like saying, if you want financial returns, you can't also be concerned with impact. But it's so I also think that that is also a false dichotomy, because I think even with the faith-based organizations, without the financial returns, Oxfam would not be a multi-billion-dollar
Exactly.
organization. World Vision will not be the same. I mean, these organizations need the financial return so that they can continue to stay in business whilst they make impact. But I think for a long time, I think that argument was really at the center of the field a few years ago. And so many people wanting to sound good or altruistic will say impact first. I actually think that you can make the argument that you don't have to choose. You can do all of them at the same time.
And what would you consider to be the edge that impact investing has over the traditional, more conventional investment types, as a strategy for sustainable development? Because that's really what we're trying to achieve, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa.
Yes, I think this is also another brilliant question, where I think the way to look at impact investing is as part of a continuum, right? So on the continuum, you have different types of financing, and different types of financing suitable for whatever solution. So you talked earlier on about the fact that I support women entrepreneurs, and in my work, when I had a day job that was investing in women entrepreneurs, what I was looking for, I would always tell the women, I said, if you want money to start a business, don't go to a bank, especially if the interest rates are 23% at that time.
At the
Now it's
time.
20, yes, now it's 26, 27, in some cases
Or
even
more.
higher. Yes, exactly. So I would say to them, at the start of your business, do not go for a bank loan. Does that mean a bank loan is bad? No, it's just not. Your business will die if you do that at that point. There'll be a time on lifespan of the business when it may be necessary to go for a bank loan, when your business can absorb the interest rates. And so impact investing comes earlier on the continuum as an option because we're talking about supporting MSMEs, supporting social enterprises, for organizations or companies that do not want that deep financial commitment or deep impact on their entities. And so on the continuum, you also have private equity and VC financing, right? The earlier days of impact investing, it was private equity and VCs that did impact investing. But now you have all sorts of players involved in the impact investing space. So that is what makes impact investing different from all of these other types of financing on the continuum is that intentionality I talked about. Any one of those players can be impact investors, but they must come to the table with that intentionality to make profit, yes, but also, especially these days, environmental impact and social impact.
So some of the examples you've used, right,
Mm-hmm.
before you introduce the PEs and the VCs
Mm-hmm.
were like moral, religious organizations.
Yeah.
So to what extent do you see this impact investing as a moral imperative, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
versus a pragmatic, hard-nosed financial strategy, that delivers financial returns, and yeah, it could have a moral component, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes financial sense.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see? How do you balance both?
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure Blackstone, which has an impact fund, will tell you it's hard-nosed financial decisions. So I will take away the word moral and
Mm-hmm.
replace it with socially conscious. So
Okay.
impact investing just means that you have become a socially conscious financial institution or a socially conscious investor that wants to be at the cutting edge of financing institution or financing, whether it is businesses. I mean, I'm focused on business, but a lot of people focus on financing social entrepreneurs. And the idea for all of these organizations is that financial pragmatism is key. Because the only thing I'll say about the financial returns is some people will tell you that they're fine with market rate returns. That's still a financial decision. Some impact investors will say they don't mind below market rates returns. Still a financial decision. And some impact investors will tell you, look, I want above market rates
Mm-hmm.
returns, especially impact investors that are now coming into the space of renewable energy, which if you give me time, I can talk about later about how that is a crucial example of how impact investing can change a sector.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Blackstone as a big impact investor.
Mhm.
Who do you consider to be the most influential figure or figures in the history of impact investing, and why?
I would not let me not do individuals. Can I do institutions? Because I think it takes a lot of people to develop an industry because that's
Okay.
what they did. I think the initial players, Rockefeller,
Mm-hmm.
Rockefeller actually coined the phrase impact investing. So I think, they always take the kudos for that. But I would talk about organizations like GIN, the Global Impact Investing Network. There certainly are ecosystem shapers. I will talk about the Global Steering Committee on the GSG. You
Yeah.
mentioned the National Advisory Board on Impact Investing. I will be biased and talk about that because I think having that body in Nigeria, first of its kind, was really a game changer. There will be a second and a third and a fourth board, but that initial board, I think, just really played a role. And of course, Patrick, the excellent work you did helping to map out the sector for us. That initial work will exist for decades. So I think rather than individual, I think a certain, committed group of individuals um, came together under institutions to make tremendous impact, both in Nigeria and globally.
And then globally, I mean, how has the field of impact investing changed since its
Mm.
inception? What are some of the pivotal moments, and what shaped that environment, both
Mm.
globally and in Nigeria?
I think, it would be a miss of me not to mention one Nigerian in this conversation, and that would be Innocent Chukuma,
Yeah.
of blessed memory, for Ford Foundation, who gave the first grants and financial support to set up the Impact Investors Foundation. Because I
Mm.
also think that was a very, very bold move. It was bullish. A lot of people, when you said impact investing at that time, would be like, what are you talking about? So I just remember that if there's going to be an individual I will talk about
Mhm.
is I think what Innocent did to put money behind something that could have failed completely is
Mhm.
worth mentioning. Your question was globally. Sorry, ask me again.
Yeah, I mean, so globally, how has the industry changed or evolved, and what were
Yes.
some of those pivotal moments? Yeah.
I so yes, I think globally, well, we're talking about you wouldn't believe that when I started working on impact investing, the returns were, I can never forget the year. I fail to remember which year it was now, but I remember that the returns for that year, $20 million.
Hmm.
2023, we're talking of almost $1 trillion.
Hmm.
And it says the figures are that by 2033 to be 7 trillion. That is incredible growth. Unfortunately, Patrick, Africa gets only the dregs of that.
Hmm.
And I'm convinced that it's because we don't have vehicles that can absorb all that type of investment. There are actually people who say they will invest in Africa and take big money and then don't do it because they will say we can't fund businesses in Africa, they're not strong. So I think our challenge is if we want to be part of that global conversation of growth, from going to where it was only a number of organizations that were talking about impact investing to now you have a massive impact investing event in London every May. The Jane events are massive. The Global Steering Committee on Impact Investing, massive. And
Also here in Nigeria, we've got the
Nigeria,
event coming up. Yeah.
yes. I mean, before you could go to Impact Investor, we'll be 10 in a room. Now you go and the events that the Impact Investor Foundation hosts, you go into the hundreds of people. My problem is I'm worried that we're not documenting this growth. I'm worried that 20 years from now, some of the things that we're talking about will now be starting afresh like they never happened. So I'm currently a researcher. I'm completing my doctorate right now. And simply because of this issue with data, we don't collect data in Africa. And so our stories get lost or somebody else tells our stories. So I know that you're doing 10 million things next year, but that could be something you take up to make sure that I'm serious. Somebody has to document this because we're living history, and the first is always the most difficult. But because no one is consciously documenting, I'm worried that we're going to lose all of this work that's happened in the last 5-6 years. I mean, I have to remind people outside the sector of the role that Innocent plays in this field. That shouldn't be the case. It should be common knowledge, right? So I think that is where I think we're lacking.
And I agree with you. There's a lot of work to be done. Not a lot of workers in the vineyard, but we'll figure it out.
Yes.
So you talked a bit about something that's a big issue in the sector, which is the depth of the market, or the depth of the deal pipeline, yeah, and just the absorptive nature or capacity of the sector. If you could speak to what are the challenges with building up a robust enough deal pipeline for impact investors who've got money and they're looking for opportunities to put the monies in.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this. When we set up SMENG, I was very lucky. I was approached by Chapel Hill Denham, the partner, to set up SMENG, and they brought the initial investment. A lot of people also don't know that story. So Chapel Hill came, and when you're building something like that, it's a luxurious position to have enough capital to do it. And so I decided that nobody was courageous enough to invest in the pre-seed stage for women entrepreneurs, which is the most difficult stage. Patrick, the average lifespan of a startup in Nigeria is 18 months. They die afterwards.
Exactly.
Somebody has to be investing in the front end. I was sitting with an investor. I sit on the SDG Impact Finance committee, and we look at deals worth millions of dollars. And when I think about the fact that I don't see Nigerian deals coming through, I'm like, what is going on? I know that they're good businesses. The problem is many of these businesses don't go past a certain stage. And when you're talking about deal flow and pipeline, people are risk averse, very risk averse. We must admit that there's a trust deficit in the Nigerian environment. I always say, when I used to go out to raise money, I used to say there's double jeopardy against me. I am a woman and I'm a Nigerian. So it's double jeopardy because people view women investors as risky. And then from Nigeria, they will do, I used to call it double due diligence, not just normal due diligence. They would double the due diligence. And that makes it very difficult for us to have a very, very robust pipeline. That means those of us who are Nigerian, we need to invest in the early stage. We need to give catalytic financing. And that's why the work that the National Advisory Board is doing, trying to raise this money to invest locally, is very important, because you will find that the appetite to do it would not commonly come from outside Nigeria.
And maybe this is a place to talk a little bit more about that work the NABI is doing, especially around the Wholesale Impact Investment Fund, and the role it could play to really catalyze businesses in Nigeria.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've left the board, so I had to leave because of conflict of interest. But it was such a pleasure to work on that board. I was part of the committee that worked on the Wholesale Impact Fund, and the excellent work that Nextier did to support us through that process. We are doing something, like I talked about, in history making, to have capital enough in Nigeria that will be managed with international standards to support and build the ecosystem for SMEs. We agreed to start with agri, right, and health, but the success of that will grow through to other areas. And I'm very impressed that even though the previous government committed to giving the seed financing, this government is committed to continuing it. Of course, everything with government, there is some bureaucracy, but the intention is there. Because I think the Minister for Budget and Planning actually came to the conference that IIF organized last year to show the government's commitment to continue it. And everybody's looking at Nigeria. It's so funny that with all the challenges we have as a country, the whole of Africa always looks at us to see the path that we take. And I'm really hoping that I'm no longer on the board, but I wish them all the best. And, I'm still very much in contact with them. So I'm really hoping that that process is successful. And that's why in my office, when the vice president was putting together names for an implementing committee, I put forward the name of the Impact Investors Foundation, because I wanted there to be synergy between the work that they had done on the Wholesale Impact Fund and the work that we're doing at the Nigerian Office for Philanthropy and Impact Investing.
Fantastic. Now, putting on your hat again as an impact investor, what were some of the metrics or indicators that you found most compelling when measuring success of impact investments in Nigeria, especially at the pre-seed or even at the seed level?
Yes, I really like these questions, because it forced me to they are forcing me to think about what we did well and what we could have done better. One of the things that I would do now, that if I was going to do it all over again, was to look at businesses beyond Lagos and Abuja, indicators. How widespread is your reach? We have two Nigerias. So there's Lagos, Abuja, Nigeria. Maybe you can add Port Harcourt and Kano, and then there's the other Nigeria. So I was very excited to have invested in a business from Jigawa. Even though I will never go to Jigawa, I knew that it was good to have a business that we could say we were investing in. That's one of the indicators, the reach of the business, of the entrepreneur. Also, another indicator for me is the involvement of the stakeholders in the design. This is something that is a problem across board. There's always the case of even the language people use internationally. We want to support Nigeria. We want to help Nigeria. There's the language is almost very, for want of a better description, patronizing.
Patronizing,
Yes, but it is the reality of what happens. And I think the agency and the voice that you can give to the places that you want to invest is very important. Let them be part of the design. So, for example, what we did in SMENG, before we released any type of investment, we would have consultations with women. And we would say, what has made your accessing finance so difficult? And how can we design something to be different? So by the time we announced the financing, the women always see that they were part of designing that solution. It was a very pedestrian way of doing it. I'm sure there are more elaborate and more scientific ways of doing it, but definitely involve the local communities in the design.
Is there any impact investing story, from Nigeria, a project from Nigeria that's had a very significant social or environmental impact, in terms of achieving its aims, just to paint a picture, for our audience as to what impact investing could do on our journey towards sustainable development?
Okay. I'm going to be biased once again in this answer because I'm going to talk about the work that Olon did.
Yeah.
Olon is the fund set up by Shell. I was on the founding board. I just left that board as well. There's too many things going on. So I've been leaving some boards. And what we did was having $50 million, we were able to invest in establishing a pipeline for the renewable energy sector in Nigeria. Olon was investing in renewable energy in businesses that had no track record. They were just starting. You see, that's what I was saying earlier about it's Nigerians that have to do that early investment. We were deliberately supporting businesses that had great ideas of advancing renewable energy, installing, even people that were just assembling little things like solar lamps. We were investing in them because we knew that if you were going to ever have an industry, these businesses would have to grow. I remember one investment I was very excited about. It was investing in a company that was providing electricity for area markets, and the
Was that
numbers.
GPE?
I don't want to call names of the but you know some of them are so big you can't even
Yeah.
Oxano, and the massive impact. I will never meet those traders on the share market, but I feel good knowing that we did something to drive that. Now, because of that work that Olon did, some Nigerians are putting together assembling plants rather than importing from China. That's what impact investing can do. It is when you see these businesses, when I see them on LinkedIn posting, I remember sitting in a meeting where their projects were presented and I smile because I know that work has created a robust industry. Not only Olon, there are other players, but I meet people who tell me all the time, my first grant came from Olon. My first grant came from Olon. My first grant came from Olon. And that's really powerful. I see that also in the agri space. A lot of impact investing has gone into agri-processing and supporting agri-based businesses across Nigeria. A good example is the investing that went into tomato juice and the brilliant work that's going on there. I personally invested in a business in Kaduna. The lady exports stew and soup bases. Yes, and incredible business. And we were one of the first to invest in her. So this is what impact investing. Now I see that lady, she's with Sherry Blair and all these people. And I wonder if she remembers that I was her first investor, But it's fine. It's good that these things are happening. For me, that's the magic of impact investing. If it is done right, it can catalyze an entire industry.
So another question is obviously we're going through a bit of an economic challenge at the moment. How do market forces or economic cycles affect impact investing? So on the one hand, you would think that now is when we need a lot more impact investment funds, but the environment could also affect the quantum of money that comes into the market. So how does that work out in reality?
It is, and right now, every conversation I have is dollar exchange question. Every conversation I have is, how is our investment going to be secure? I have not spoken to a potential investor in the last year that has not brought that up. And it's very sad. It's very sad. I always say that everybody talks about the potential of Nigeria. It's time to talk about the reality. You could be potentialing all the time. And the market forces, we saw it during COVID. People tend to hold their investing to their chest when things get tight, even though Warren Buffett says that's the time to invest, but he
Yeah.
listens to him. And then when things are getting better, you would think things got better for a period in Nigeria, and then we fell into this flux that we're in right now, where I talked about it earlier, there's truly a trust deficit in the Nigerian economy. And so even where there's so much good work being done, it's heavy lifting to access finance. And so the DFIs are doing it, but they're doing it for the big players, right? And so who is going to invest in the much smaller players is a problem. I'm one of my partners talked about um, the economic situation in Nigeria, that the first thing that we need to address is brand Nigeria. And if brand Nigeria is improved systematically, the other things will fall into place.
Fantastic, fantastic. One of my friends says that we need to focus on brand Niger, which is where all the energy is.
Yeah.
And brand
Yeah.
Nigeria is where all the bureaucracy is.
I'll
I
take
just
that
focus,
one.
focus on brand Niger, right? But I don't want us to leave here thinking, that impact investing is all hunky-dory, no issues with it. So there are obviously some issues. Some of them could even be ethical, so the unintended consequences that could happen, from, impact investing, how do you navigate that? What are some of those, and how do you navigate that?
Oh, I mean, we're still going through the effect of Abraj and what happened in the Abraj case. And after that, a lot of people raising capital after that. There are just so many trust issues. The woman who said she had a cure, the blood
Yes.
innovation. I can't remember her name off the top of my
Yeah,
head. That
Elizabeth. Yeah, yeah,
Elizabeth. So that's another
yeah.
problem. You see, what happens is when one bad story comes into the market or comes into the field, because those two are examples of impact investing, it colors how trusting investors will be. They were not doing due diligence on those companies because they felt that they had passed the initial stages. Because of all those things, investors are now more hands-on than ever. And when you're thinking about, especially when you're thinking about giving significant money, people literally will put a microscope on you. And I think in some respects is necessary. The ethical part of impact, there's something called impact washing, where a lot of some organizations, they're not really interested in impact investing. They just want to use it as profiling tick to say we're doing all of this and look good and all of that, and they can afford the best people that can do digital marketing. They put on all the designs of how many lives in Africa they're saving, and it's really not true. Those issues do exist in the sector. And I think for us, one of the ways that we did a project I remember doing a project with the US government, and they gave us a significant amount of money. And the way that we were both able to be comfortable with that project was verification. Verification is, for me, is central to impact investing. You must go to exactly where the projects were implemented. And you must not have one person's perspective of what happened. You must have more than one person's perspective. I think it has to be, that takes us back to the early days of development work, but that's the way we have to do it now because of these issues that have come through, and everybody says, oh no, X investor lost this amount of money because they trusted, they wanted to do impact investing. Nobody wants to have those stories, but they do exist. You're right. We can't run away from the challenges in the sector.
And I mean, with this new development, impact investors now have to get more involved in the investee companies,
Yeah.
etc., To what extent should impact investors be involved in the governance, of the projects they fund? So I understand you've put money in, there needs to be oversight, etc. But where do you draw the line, without the impact investor, getting too involved, and then probably altering the business plan?
Yeah, I mean, there's the good and the bad. I think I'm fine with the models where they insist on being on the board, the advisory board. That's fine. If you have nothing to hide anyway, they insist on being observers or being part of the financing decision making. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem when they decide without telling you, they start talking to your beneficiaries, almost like they're checking on you, because that leaves a message in the minds of the beneficiaries. And that goes on a lot in Nigeria. It goes on way too often. I think, and we have to also admit that there's a power dynamics with investing. So a lot of Nigerians don't know that you can tell your investor that that's wrong, but they will not want to do it because they'll be afraid of losing the investment. And many people don't want to be honest about the power dynamics in investing. It's there, it's real, and some people abuse it. But when you start to gain confidence in your work, a lot of people are pushing back and saying, no, this is not what we agreed. There are terms to this, and please try and stick to those terms. Yeah.
How do you see artificial intelligence, machine learning evolving and playing a role in impact investing? Both positive and negative. What's your take on the evolution of AI?
It's scary. It's very scary, and AI can help with efficiency, doing things faster than human beings, maybe. But I'm very worried about AI removing the personal touch. The reasons why I like the work that I do is I meet incredible people. There's nothing more fulfilling than giving somebody money that changes the trajectory of their lives or their businesses. I'm telling you, it is the most fulfilling thing. And I tell people that's why I do what I do. And I have a feeling now with AI, people are talking about helping with due diligence, AI doing all of that. So you never get to meet anybody. Everything will just be done. I'm not so eager, but I like the part of AI that will help with efficiency, that will help with, because I remember when I was at Tiwa Danjuma Foundation, sometimes we would have to read, my team, not me. Eventually, I would read maybe 20 proposals, but the team would read hundreds, And so if AI can help with that, that's really, really a benefit. But I think even the founders of AI are talking about the downside of it and what it can introduce into the market. My colleague tells me she can use AI to help with raising financing. So maybe the next interview we have, I'll tell you how that goes. But she tells me that we can use AI to do that. So we'll see.
No, I'm eager to learn more from her. But what emerging trends are you seeing, either locally or globally, that you're most excited about, or most concerned about, right? What trends will shape the future of impact investing in, say, the next decade?
Gender lens investing. I'm really excited. I'm excited that there is a recognized type of investing called gender lens investing, which means and impact investors should be natural gender lens investors, which means every investment apply a lens as to how it affects men and women. I think that's the future. I think that a lot of the climate financing is getting the most amount of money right now. I think that's good. That's going to shape the next few years. I'm quite excited about all of that. I'm also very excited about prospect of homegrown investing. And that's what, when we talk about the wholesale impact fund and things like that, I believe that the perception that Africans always go cap in hand can only change when you have local investing.
Mm.
And I think that that's something that I'm very prepared to work on that. And that's something that I feel will be a conversation changer when we
Mm.
do that. Yeah.
Can you speak more about that?
Mm-hmm.
Especially the role for local communities,
Mm-hmm.
in shaping what that solution could be, and
Yeah.
also in ensuring that those businesses succeed. And also the role of some of the funds being raised locally from
Mm-hmm.
local business people who today may not even think, not business people, but people of means, who may not think that this is a credible investment class.
Yeah. I strongly believe in this part of impact investing. Local capital is critical. And so this office that the vice president established is a facilitation office. We're not implementers. So we're to help with facilitating players to work with the government. And one of the first things I said was, before I talk to any international organization, I want to talk to local players. I want Nigerian money to be what establishes the work of this office. And I'm pleased to tell you that that's what has happened. We got a very substantive grant from Wema Bank to set up a platform that would democratize giving. Every Nigerian I know in the West, by the way, I see the brilliant work your daughter is doing. She should come and give to my platform, Patrick.
Thank you.
Um, I think her name is Amma. I saw something
Yeah.
very impressive. So people like that exist globally. They want to make a difference in their country. And we have this generation of diaspora young Nigerians that are Niger more than Nigerian.
Exactly.
I really have to use that difference. And it's as little as $2 they want to give, but they don't have a platform, they don't have access to it. So we created this thing completely funded by Nigerian money. We're announcing a facility with Access Bank, completely funded by Nigerian money, to give catalytic financing to entrepreneurs. And there'll be a series of announcements we're going to make like that. And doesn't mean I'm not going to go out and raise international capital, but it gives me more credibility when I do,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I'm able to say, look at what the Nigerian companies did, look at what local capital did. And I think, when we talk about people of means, we always focus on the big players. They're very important. And I think they've done an excellent job to set the psyche that you can do it, from Dangote to T.Y.
Benjamin.
Danjuma to Lumelu. They've set the psyche that it can be
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
But we cannot really galvanize local capital that way. We need to democratize the whole sector and lower the barriers to entry. That's why
Mhm.
our platform is the equivalent of $2 you can
Mhm.
give. I think a lot of Nigerians in the middle class, they can do that without thinking about it. And that's one of the things I'd like to establish as a culture for us.
Sure. And when we speak about philanthropy, I guess it's the word philanthropy, right? That makes it sound very exotic, very Western. Every Nigerian I know is a philanthropist. Every
Yes,
Nigerian who's
yes.
got a job is supporting dozens of people, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but I think why philanthropy took hold in the West was that they had some enabling laws around it. So, for instance, in the United States, if you gave money to charity, you had a way of getting some of that back in taxes, right?
Exactly.
So, is your office thinking of ways to really institutionalize giving? So for
Mm-hmm.
instance, um, like every other Nigerian, I support some people, but I get nothing back. I do all of that, I still pay my taxes. Is there a way I can write that off, against my taxes? Are you thinking about those? Please share with us. Hmm?
Yes, yes. It wasn't the original mandate of this office, but we can't run away from being part of those conversations. So in fact, that's your question you asked. Our partners, the Impact Investors Foundation, is hosting an event tomorrow in the National Assembly, and to have that conversation
Yes.
with legislators to say, look, no matter how much you wish for people to collaborate, it needs to be incentivized.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be. Look at you with all the work that you do. You still want some type of incentive. Can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine someone who does not have the heart of being socially conscious, but you want him to come and play in this field? He's
Mm-hmm.
going to ask you, I'm sorry, I pay my taxes. That should be enough, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the type of things that we're doing. They seem, I think for a lot of people, the fruit of these things will not be seen now, but they're very necessary building blocks to have because, as you said, if you don't incentivize it, people are not going to do it en masse. You're going to have
Exactly.
the odd person that just wants to do it, but we want there to be a critical mass of Nigerians that are involved in structured philanthropy. Because you are right, every Nigerian is supporting somebody else. But we're talking about structured philanthropy that is accountable and that is transparent. In fact, so this platform that we established with Wema Bank, I insisted that we have Deloitte
Mm-hmm.
audit it because I wanted people to, there's this feeling that people say, oh, it's a Nigerian thing, it's a Nigerian way. No, no, no. I wanted people
Mm-hmm.
to see that, if you go to platforms like Kiva, right, which is a global philanthropic platform,
Mm-hmm.
they're audited by the best in the world. We can also be audited by the best in the world. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when we start to do those kind of things, it changes how people perceive what we're doing. And this trust deficit that is there will start to reduce.
Mm-hmm. And I know that we switched from impact investing to philanthropy,
Philanthropy,
but
yes.
I hope the audience is flowing with us that they're two different things, kind of
Yes.
related but two different things. So if I bring us back to impact investing, which is what we're talking about today,
Yeah.
if there
Mm.
is one thing that you could change about the current impact investing landscape in Nigeria, what would that be and why?
Mm. I would change how cliquish it is. It's
Interesting.
still very much a click.
Okay.
And maybe I'm also part of the guilty people, but it's still very much a click. I think we need to invest in new players. I think we need to go out and have new converts. Um, if you're going to grow this industry, you can't have it's grown in the sense that more organizations are involved in it. But I
Mhm.
remember talking to someone who said there's only one university in the whole of Africa that's teaching impact investing. So
Mm,
that means people are not studying it
mm,
as a career choice.
mm,
And once you don't have that, you have people that will fall into it, but you won't have people that there'll be a deliberate conscious effort to say this is what I want to do in the future and build a career around it. I think that's
mm.
what I would change. I would change
Okay.
that. I would invest in and some people are interested in that. Invest in how we grow the next crop of people that will be doing what you and I are doing today.
Excellent. And we're going to open it up for audience participation in a few minutes, but a
Okay.
few more questions before we get there. But just to say to the audience, I see you're already posting your questions in the Q&A. Please keep putting it in there. I will get to them and we will do the right attribution to the questions we pick from there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
maybe some more personal reflections, Thelma. What's the most surprising thing you've learned from your work in impact investing? What is it that you're like, wow, that's you didn't know before you got in the space, that's changed you the most since you got in the space?
It's hard to claim impact.
Interesting.
Very, very, very hard to claim impact. Impact takes a really long time. You can claim trends, but I'm
Correlations.
very
Mm-hmm.
yes, you can claim behavioral change is the hardest thing to claim.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can claim because when people tell me we made impact, they completely change their attitudes. I'm like, really? Okay. It's very hard, and I think I'm a lot more, I'm an old woman now in this field, Patrick. So I'm a lot more circumspect and I take the little wins more as opposed to years ago when I was probably a lot more bullish and a
Mm-hmm.
lot more, wanting to conquer the world. Now I'm like, you know what? Maybe if we only did this, it's good enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? Somebody else will build on what we've done. Let's not try and think that So for me, impact has to be very nuanced. I always tell people about the trends we saw in the work that we did. I cannot tell you that we can claim all the impact that
Exactly.
occurred in that work. Yeah.
Exactly. If you had Jeff Bezos type money, like real crazy, real crazy money, right? And you were to start an impact investment fund now, what would be the first three projects you'd fund in
Very
Nigeria?
easy. A bank for women, a bank for women, a bank for women.
Interesting. So access to finance for women.
I will establish a bank called the Bank for Women.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
Very easy.
Hmm.
I even
Why
have the
has
blueprint.
why ha
I have the blueprint for it in case anybody is interested,
and
Yes.
why haven't you been able to sell that idea to all of your very powerful friends?
Maybe that's the next, maybe that's my retirement plan if nobody does it before me. I think I've looked at it. I actually about it with somebody who was heading one of the big financial institutions, and he was very interested.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very interested. He's no longer there, but I think you need the kind of players that you need to do this are significant.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with the central bank having the appetite for it.
Mm-hmm.
So but I really believe that a country like Nigeria should have something like that.
Is there a model anywhere in the world?
Oh, there's several models. There's
Yeah.
several models. I mean, what the Grameen Bank did was on a smaller scale in
But it
Bangladesh.
wasn't it wasn't focused on women though.
It was totally women.
Yeah.
Grameen Bank is women, yeah. And
Okay.
then there's a bank in Brazil. Actually, I like the Brazilian one very
Hmm.
much because it was much larger businesses.
Okay.
But and it changes the economic environment when it's done well. So
Hmm.
when it's actually any money I have, number one, number two, number three will be that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay,
Mm.
so LLB from University of Buckingham, MBA,
Mhm.
Imperial College, fellow Stanford University. The world is really your oyster. Why did you choose impact investing? Why did you choose the
Mm.
philanthropy space?
Mm.
Why Nigeria? Yeah. Why do you believe that your efforts will make any difference?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm currently doing my doctorate. I'm currently completing my doctorate. I've done 2 years of it now, and that is the question I'm being asked right now. So somehow you're in the spirit. The and honestly, I had the privilege. So my first career was peace building and conflict resolution.
Mhm.
That's when, after I graduated from law, I wanted to work for the UN, and I was really attracted to the work that were working in conflict resolution was doing. So I had the privilege of working in Liberia and Sierra Leone. And when I was in Liberia, I saw that nothing can change the poverty situation in Nigeria, in Africa, faster than entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship is the ticket.
Mhm.
Give people in their own hands the resources to change their lives and contribute to their society. So I went back to school and did an MBA
Mhm.
because my MBA is in entrepreneurship to understand both the science and the arts of entrepreneurship. And as I was doing that, I worked for the Soros Foundation. You mentioned it, working at the West African Civil Society Institute in Ghana. In that job, I was responsible for 15 countries. And as I was doing that, I realized that, look, your talents are needed at home.
Mhm.
I hadn't been home all that time. And somehow all the jobs I was getting was taking me to South Africa, but not home. And I am completely Nigerian. The love I have for my country, you cannot quantify it. It breaks my heart all the time, but I'm still, very, very pro-Nigerian. And I honestly believe that, we're a country that we can do incredible things if we set our mind to it. And so
Yeah.
I decided, I got a job offer, headhunted to come back to Nigeria, and it was the Tiwa Danjuma Foundation. And I always say that, that was one of the best lessons of my life, because it put me in a position to invest in businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, I saw what I'm talking about today, how you give someone money and it not only changes their business, it changes their entire life.
Mm.
And I promised myself I would not do anything else, that this would be what I would do, because it's so gratifying. The people talk about job fulfillment. There's just so much fulfillment when you change somebody else's life.
I can't I can't argue that point with you. I agree 100%. And especially how you describe Nigeria, in my down moments, I say that living in Nigeria is like being in an abusive relationship. It deals with you, but you can't leave it, right? And you feel
Yes.
you can turn the country around, and you keep going. But hopefully, we can fix it. I've got some questions here. The first is from Maureen Idozu.
Okay.
What
Hi, Maureen.
are the yeah. What are the most potent vehicles for channeling impact investment into Nigeria?
Okay. Very good question. I think there are different models we can look at. We can look at the model so I talked about all on and a fund. So that's one model. Another model can be private equity, venture capital. Another model, if you are just interested in catalytic financing, there's some very good vehicles that use the structure of accelerators or hubs. Our current minister for information technology was an ecosystem changer through the co-creation hub that he set up, and helped to start a lot of businesses that have gone on to be multi-million-dollar businesses.
Yep.
So they're just different vehicles. It just depends on your own risk appetite. And I tell people that, I could never do private equity. My partners were private equity people. I don't like the cutthroat nature of private equity. I'm very comfortable in the impact investing catalytic financing stage. So it
Mm,
just depends on how you are, your constituency, and what you're passionate about.
mm. Let me combine two questions. One is again from Maureen, and the other is from Kehinde Adewoye. So Maureen says, can grants awarded to a charitable non-profit cause be classified as impact investing? So if you give some money to a charity organization, is that impact investing? And then Kehinde's question is, please differentiate between impact investing and ESG.
The common question. So ESG is simply a company reporting or an organization reporting the extent to which their bottom line has made impact. So the bottom line, has it made environmental, social, or governmental impact? That's reporting. Impact investing is not about just reporting. Reporting is just one of the avenues. But for impact investing, like I said, it's an intentional strategy to invest. It's an investment strategy, right? So that is the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Maureen said an organization giving money to a
A
charitable.
charitable cause or to an NGO or that kind of
Okay.
thing.
So my question to Maureen was, did they have financial returns? If yes, did they have social returns? If yes, did they have environmental returns? If yes, then my next question is, when they were designing the financing, was it intentional to do that?
Right.
If all those things are there, then it's impact investing. If one of those pillars is taken out, it's not impact investing.
And if all those pillars are in, but the intentionality wasn't there at the beginning,
Exactly.
then
That's
it's
it.
not impact
If
investing.
they didn't intentionally design it that way, then it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for those responses. I have a question from Akachi Ngu. What other sectors outside health and agriculture catches the interest of an impact investor? I guess the question he's asking here is, are there any sectors that impact investors are really interested in or not interested in?
So you will find a lot of impact investors doing tech, a lot of impact investors, like I mentioned in Nigeria, there have been change makers in the agribusiness space and in renewable energy, but impact investing can be anything. Actually, impact investing in Nigeria that probably is underreported the entrepreneurs, people that have invested in education entrepreneurs. That's also impact investing. There's no sector that cannot receive impact investing. It's just the interest of the investor. And if you are a recipient, because we also have impact-oriented entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur that you're looking for money, you must design your business strategy in such a way that it will attract impact investing.
We have a question from Chibueze Eke, I believe it's C Solar.
Okay.
If a startup solar company, and I thought that's the giveaway, it's C Solar. If
Okay.
a startup solar company already has an impact investor and is seeking further funding from other potential impact investors, what's the best way to identify one that is a strategic fit?
You already have somebody investing in you.
Correct.
Okay, and you want more.
Correct.
So I'm taking you want more to scale. That must be why you want more, because that means the one you have is not sufficient. I think, first of all, you must have that conversation with your early investor. It depends on the type of arrangement you have. If it was a once-off investing, they invested and they went, that's fine. If it's a continuous investors, some investors are very particular about the type of other investors you invite in. You need to know that. So if you want to scale, first of all, I tell people, I mentor businesses, I mentor entrepreneurs, and I tell them one of the things that was my best endeavor or pastime was going for cocktails and drinks organized by industry people. Believe me, somebody that you have been trying to see for 5-6 months, you'll just see them over the coffee table and you have a conversation. Many people I know, many startups don't do that. And I tell them that's a major mistake you're making. Because no matter what anybody tells you that, oh, investing is, I want people to invest in me. Must they know me? Investing is a very personal business. People invest in people they know, they can vouch for, and actually that they like. So if you want more money, fine. I don't know about yours, but I don't know where you're based. But now in Lagos, oh, you're based in Abuja. Okay, I'm sure it happens in Abuja too, but certainly in Lagos for renewable energy, there's always something going on. You can also contact the Climate Innovation Center in Lagos and ask them. The MD is a spectacular human being and will be able to give you tips on who is financing in your area.
Continuing along those lines, Israel Faleye says, how can social entrepreneurs get in touch with impact investors? There seems to be quite a few, and many entrepreneurs lack access to information on available impact investment vehicles. So is there a place you can go for information?
So let me broaden what I said earlier. Don't miss the next Impact Investors Summit organized by the Impact Investors Foundation. There are 2 summits coming up. One is in July, one is in November. Make sure you're there. Everybody you want to meet will be there. I'm not kidding. The big players are all there, but there are other events in Lagos. So when you're talking about impact investors coming to things, that's a free event that you can just register and go to. And there's no reason why you should not.
In addition to their events, they also do a lot of breakfast sessions and information sessions. So a good place to start is the Impact Investor Foundation website. And, you plug yourself into a very useful ecosystem. There's a question from Chidima Obi. Is there potential for impact investing and social entrepreneurship to help bridge access to public goods like health and education? Are there any successful examples of how impact investors have funded businesses that profitably provided healthcare and education to underserved populations?
I think I mentioned education. For healthcare, health actually, because obviously it's capital intensive, so you're looking at big investments there. Yes, there are some players that do that, I mean, you can look at you can look at Kuramo Capital. There are many players that do that in Nigeria that, but I don't know the type of business you're running. If you're talking about a startup, then you have to go for lower money. And I think you should look at foundations for that. If it's healthcare, Tiba Danjuma Foundation funds healthcare. Look for people, if you're a startup, obviously you're looking for grants or patient capital. Don't go for big, the big players that are giving venture capital. I can't talk about it fully unless I know the stage of your business and the type of capital. But if it's startups, look at foundations. If it's much bigger capital you're looking for to scale, look at venture capital for healthcare.
Is there a place where they can get this information without, clogging up your mailbox?
So there's so many platforms now, it's unbelievable. Things like there's a platform called Opportunities for Africans.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they did something on years ago. Look at Opportunities for Africans. They have lists of funding available, different types of funding. Look at VC for Africa is another one. They have different types of funding available. All this, I know that some people say they don't know that this information is available, but it actually is just knowing where it is. So I've given you two now, Opportunities for Africans, VC for Africa. There's those VC for Africa actually has different types of capital. Opportunities for Africa, you will see a lot of grants there.
Yeah. So Sunday James, you had a question in here asking for her contact so that you can pitch an idea. I think maybe start with the sites that she's mentioned,
Yes.
and take it from there. There is a question from an anonymous attendee. How do you measure adequate impact in Nigeria when there is a shortage of data and lack of transparency between Nigerian investors and local investees? This is a big,
Very, very,
yeah,
very important question. I think we kind of touched on it,
on it. Yeah.
Patrick, where I
Mm-hmm.
was saying that verification is key. At the
Mm-hmm.
at the start of every project, you and your investors, you will agree on indicators. You will agree on the type of indicators that you will track over time. But the ways to make sure that these things really happen is verification on the ground. There's no getting around it.
Mm-hmm. And I see a comment here from Etemere Glover, who started the Impact Investor Foundation. She said our website, www.impactinvestorsfoundation.org. If you're a business looking for impact investors, go to Deal Source Africa at www.dealsourceafrica.co. Etemere, thanks for that contribution. I have a question from Ime Enang. When people talk about investing in youth, they're talking about 21 to 40. I know young ladies who are 14 to 20, but they are disqualified by the age bracket. Where can girls go?
Wow, that's such a good one. So when they talk about youth, actually, when we did youth, we did 18. We did
Yeah.
18. We did 18. Um, I think younger than 18 is always tricky. I think younger than 18, is very small amounts that you're going to give. I know that we did something where we're giving between 500,000 and ₦1 million because at that point, you don't want them to be, at least this is my point of view, you don't want them to be distracted by other things. But from 18, most donors now, actually, because so many young people are innovators, especially the tech investors, they actually look younger than 21. They look at up to 18.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a question from Victor Alabwe. How best do you think the country can attract long-term foreign impact investors despite the macroeconomic challenges we face, which limits commercial returns? What should we be doing? What should we be saying to them? What should we be pitching to international impact investors?
Well, thank you, Victor. That's my day job now, looking at how, yeah, because no matter how nice your project is, they're going to ask you what is the policy environment like? How can you hedge my funding to make sure I don't get lower than my investment? So the macro the macro environment conditions extremely important if you're going to attract in Nigeria, I mean, extremely important if you're going to attract foreign investment in impact investing. No matter how much, most investors will tell you Nigeria is our priority country. They actually say that. But then they start taking off all the reasons why it is so difficult. So you have a situation in Nigeria where the same people get funded. The same people get funded. And you feel that it's very unfair, but you know why they do it? It's safe to do. Those people have been tested. Nobody has the energy to go and start doing trial and error. That is why local capital has to first do the initial investing and then we can go to others. But Victor, your question is very important because until we have the right policy environment, until we have ways that we can safeguard investors' money. Do you know how many investors lost so much money in the last 10 years in Nigeria? The stories are frightful. So obviously people don't want to be caught in those things where they feel like, okay, I invested in a bank, then you just shut the bank down. You know, these are stories that people talk about in the investment community all the time. So we need to build on the policy environment and make sure we have the right legislation, make sure we have ways of securing investors' capital so that there are countries, there are things, I mean, I know that FMDQ and so many organizations in Nigeria are trying to do that where, you know, investors don't lose out on all their money, but still needs to be tighter. And obviously those kind of investors that people are talking about, it should be across the spectrum, both the very big investors like DFIs and also very small investors that are bringing $5-10 million.
There's a very specific question here from Miracle Emeka Nkwo. When looking to invest in the fashion industry, especially apparels and clothing, what metrics do impact investors look out for beyond eco-friendliness? I don't know if you've had exposure to this space.
Yes, very good. I was just having a conversation around this. It's something we are looking at as well. Thanks for that question, Miracle. I think, first of all, where do you, if you want to scale, you don't have to have all the equipment. But one thing I see a lot in fashionpreneurs is they want to be in New York Fashion Show, but they're still dealing with 2 sewing machines and nobody's going to invest in you. So what I tell them is, you know, you don't have to have it yourself. Thank God now there's so many ways that you can outsource or use existing machinery. One of the things that we're looking at is how we create hubs that heavy duty machines are available to people to come and use, because that is when people will invest in you, when you have a growth trajectory, or you have to be able to show that you have sold beyond your family and friends as a fashionpreneur. So it's much easier for you guys now where you can sell on Instagram and all of this. Why don't you do some of that? Do a lot of that so that by the time you're talking to an investor, the investor knows that people will actually buy your stuff. Because if an investor cannot believe that people will buy your stuff, they're not going to give you any money.
So there's a question from Bushra Balogu. So in your words, nothing can change the poverty situation in Africa faster than entrepreneurship. Yes. What's your opinion about impact investing focused on education and upskilling with the new trends and opportunities in technology sector, especially AI and robotics, considering our teeming youth population?
So education can also be entrepreneurship. I know people who run schools that are milking it. They're doing very, very well. So when we say about entrepreneurship, it is about you spotting an opportunity, you know, commercializing that opportunity. And that opportunity can be in any field, including education. So when I say entrepreneurship, don't think that entrepreneurship and education are opposites. No, you can bring entrepreneurial skills into education. In fact, the best schools are run by, you know, really savvy entrepreneurs.
Uche Umik Olai, how can we get more Nigerian banks interested in impact investing since they are more profit-oriented? I know you already mentioned my bank, etc.
Yes, maybe yes. To build on that. Another excellent question. Some of them are now creating foundations. as their impact investing arms. So that's a positive sign. Still too few, but they have that consciousness that their you know, their their interest rates are too high. So a lot of them are creating alternative ways. I worked with Wema Bank to design an innovative financing scheme that would look at things like revenue-based financing, bottom line, balance sheet financing, green bond financing. These are all things that banks are looking at to be able to get involved in impact investing.
Elwin Anoro, do impact investors target supply chain disruption ideas? So I think,
wow,
it's all around innovation, disruptions. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's one thing you take away from this conversation is that any sector can receive impact investing. It just means, is there an investor that has the appetite to do that? So I know an investor that's interested in, okay, at my university here in the UK, Cranfield University, we have an airport. We have our own airport. And there's a particular impact investor that's interested in drone technology, right? That is not mainstream at all, right? So it just depends on what the investor is passionate about. And that investor now creates a fund around that or a financing mechanism around that.
Another question from Maureen Idozu. How far can impact investors go in terms of capital investment into a business? Would they support construction costs, for instance, where a business already has some investments such as machinery and consumable stock? So I guess the bigger question here is, what's the gamut, that impact investors will cover?
Anything, especially if you're looking for someone, if you're looking for an investor that wants to do that, then look for investors that say they are interested in both capital overhead financing as well as programmatic financing. They state that in their requirements. So, yeah.
Question from Joseph Ubek. Thank you for the insights shared. How can the government across levels enhance the enabling environment for impact investing and philanthropy? More specifically, how can policy instruments be used to catalyze the ecosystem at scale?
I think that's what I talked about earlier about we need legislation.
Yeah.
If you need more players, we need to make sure that we incentivize them to come in. I think we also need to educate our legislators. So the work that we're doing tomorrow in the National Assembly is critical because some of them, I mean, this recording, for example, is something that a lot of them will not know, but might not know half of the things we talked about, but yet you want them to develop legislation for you. So we need to educate them. We need to make sure that we're involving them in many of the meetings that we organize, we speak to ourselves. We need to make sure that we're involving the people that are going to help us with the right policies in these conversations. And I talked about what I would change, this cliquish nature of what we're doing right now, bringing these new players, bringing people that you would not normally talk to into the conversation.
So there's a question from Hugo Ayaji, and I think it's one of the biggest questions we get in the impact investing space, which is how do you measure impact, right?
Yeah.
So what monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks have been most impactful for creating sustainable solutions in Nigeria with qualitative data, especially when multiple organizations work on an issue? How do you know who to attribute what impact to? You've spoken about it a little bit, but maybe just to drill down some more.
I personally like the GIN, GIIN impact metrics. I like them because it's universal. And even though it differs in terms of application on the ground, once you say you're using the GIN metrics, people feel like you've done serious work. Of course, the easiest one to use are the SDG matrix. Everybody has access to that. So those are ways that every time, if you say SDGs, make sure you use a tool that the person that you're working with understands the tool and is able to refer to it to say, okay, these are the indicators you use. That's the key thing. But I personally like the Jane one. And obviously the SDG is the most accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Kehinde Adewoye. Please share details for the Lagos Summit. Please check
Okay.
out the website, impactinvestorsfoundation.org. That's a good entry point to this world, and you get a lot of information from there.
Yes.
Let me switch back to some of my questions. Yeah. Just to get to know you on a more personal level, Thelma.
Okay.
Lagos or Abuja? Which do you prefer and why?
Ah, Lagos any day. I am a Lagosian through and through. I lived in Abuja for a while and I couldn't wait to go to Lagos. So,
Yeah. Why? The energy?
first of all, I like the chaos. I think everybody in Lagos needs their head examined, but chaos makes sense. It makes sense to me. And even
Yeah.
when the plane is landing into Lagos, I'm just excited. There's a buzz, you know.
London or Harrisburg, Virginia?
I've actually been to Harrisburg, Virginia, so it's strange that Harrisburg is on the list. London.
Why?
I understand London. London is down the street from Lagos.
Big city girl versus small town Harrisburg, Virginia?
Yeah, Harrisburg, you see cows, and I'm always scared of places you see cows and yeah, yeah.
Boston or California?
Oh, this one was hard. Of course, California.
Why?
So I went to Stanford.
Yeah, but you also did some work in Boston. Oh, no?
Boston, in and out, but
Mm,
definitely I like California. I like that whole San Jose vibe.
interesting. So,
Mhm.
peace building or conflict resolution?
Absolutely peace building,
Why?
more sustainable, long
But you
term.
but conflict resolution gives you the room to be able to engage.
Yes, it's finite. It's a short term thing. But peace building actually should incorporate impact investing, but that's a whole other interview. It's about
Yeah.
long term solutions. So I prefer peace building.
And negotiate with terrorists or never?
In the past, I would have said never, but today I would say negotiate. I mean, just watching Gaza, of course, negotiate.
Yeah. And what has changed?
Uh, We're older, and I think you're not so absolute in everything anymore, right?
Yeah.
There's so many gray areas in everything that we do now. And you just when you watch everything that's going on in Gaza, you just want somebody to negotiate out of that, right?
Mm,
So,
mm.
mhm.
There's a great book talking with terrorists, and I used to be don't ever negotiate until I read the book and he lays out the arguments, why you
Yeah,
need to difficult, and there are bounds, there are ways to do it, so that you don't give away so much without getting anything in return. Yeah.
absolutely.
But, yeah, so I have some comments here from Adebusui, puts opportunitytracker.net. That's another good place to check out. Um,
Mm.
there's a question from anonymous attendee. There are some startups that are capable of developing bankable and impactful projects, but have no operational history. Are there impact investors willing to take an investment risk on these types of businesses?
Oh yeah, tons, tons. That's why I talked about patient capital and early stage investing. It's high risk, potential for very high return, but definitely there are impact investors that are willing to do that.
Mhm. A question here from Olubumi Omonubi. How can SMEs contribute to impact investing in their direct environment outside funding projects? So I'm assuming he's probably involved with an SME, wants
Yes.
to contribute in his direct environment. Does that qualify as impact investing or is it
No, no,
philanthropy?
no, no. So that sounds more to me like philanthropy, right? So if you are investing, you're expecting returns. Unless you're an SME
Intentionally.
that is
Yeah.
designed exactly, unless you're an SME that's designed to get financial returns. So yeah, that's more like philanthropy.
and a contribution from Etemere Glover as well. The IFRS recently launched the International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB disclosures to help with reporting your impact. It will become mandatory for businesses in Nigeria by 2030 to report their impact, so you can start building your internal capacity to start measuring your impact. Etemere, thanks for that contribution. I think we've covered most of the questions from our guests, and just to some closing thoughts here as we come down to the last 5 minutes, and thanks for all the time you've given us and insights you've shared.
Yeah.
But question for you. If you were in an elevator, right, from the lobby of the Transcorp Hilton to the 10th floor, right, and you've got a governor of pick any state of your choice, how do you convince this governor during that short ride to adopt impact investing as an alternative investment vehicle to improve the quality of life of his people?
So let me take my state. If I was in an elevator with the Delta State governor, I would be like, you can't get the development you want without involving impact investors. So first things first, look at what is happening in Abia State. Everyone is screaming. It's not rocket science. Create an enabling environment for people to want to come and put their money there, and make sure that there are mechanisms for people to get their money out. That's it. That's it. And I think we complicate things, but actually, of course, it's nuanced, but those basics need to be there to do that.
Excellent, excellent. Is there any question about impact investing that you wish more people would ask you, and maybe I didn't even get to? And
I wish we had talked a little bit more about gender lens investing, but that's my personal passion. Because look into it, Patrick, and if you need speakers for that, I'm happy to recommend. It's actually the G7 and many other financial institutions across the world committing to gender lens investing to make sure that their investments actually are accessible by both men and women. Because when we say gender, it's men and women. So yeah, that's an exciting part of the work going forward.
Interesting. I'll spend more time looking at that space, right? Well, yes. Thelma, thank you so much for making time to join us on this. And for the audience, thank you so much for joining. In 2 weeks, June 12th, is that it? Yeah, I think around June 12th. We're going to have Professor Osita Ogbu, OON. He's the author of Development as Attitude. I'll have him discuss development as attitude, which is a whole new concept, around development and how you drive development in the developing world. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you,
and
Patrick.
See you in about 2 weeks. Thank you, Thelma.
Thank you, Patrick. Have a good evening, everyone.
You too. Bye.